Hello there, this is David from David Books and Comics, and today I want to talk about The Spirit. The Spirit created by Will Eisner. Now, Will Eisner was a major contributor to the comic books when, back in 1940, he was hired by a newspaper syndicate to create a comic book insert. Not a comic insert, but a comic book insert for the newspapers. And he came up with a character that was suggested to him by the publisher of the newspaper syndicate. And he suggested a superhero type character. But what Will Eisner had in mind was a detective, a kind of super detective, but not a superhero. Anyway, eventually he compromised and just simply created a guy with a fedora hat, blue suit, and a mask. And that became the Spirit. And you can see there, the first appearance of the Spirit was on June 2nd of 1940. This is the first volume of, I don't know how many volumes there are. I have the first 4, which I think are among the best, or are my favorites anyway, my personal favorites. And this is volume 1 with a startling cover. Each first page panel, splash page, was made to engage the reader. And the stories all had the Spirit logo, but in unique formatting, as you can see there. So I can turn now to the first ever appearance. And this is the DC Comics publication volume of the first appearance of the Spirit. And this is an introduction by Will Eisner himself. And those who collect comic books know that the Best Cartoonist Award is called the Eisner Award, named after Will Eisner. And I'll show a picture, a nice big picture of Will Eisner. But this is him in his younger years. And right here is a picture of him with Nicholas Vicardi, or Nick Cardy as he was later called, and Bob Powell. But that's Will Eisner. And this character was a 4-page adventure of a kind of Mandrake the Magician type detective called Mr. Mystic. And this was a masked, or heroine, a super heroine actually, with an alternate identity, an alter ego, called Lady Luck. This panel here was drawn. I can't think of his name, and I'm trying to remember. I can't think of his name. Oh, no, I can't remember, but I'll put the wording in the yeah. This is Chuck Mazugian, but that's not the guy who was really known for promoting the character, who wrote or drew most of the adventures. But anyway, I don't think Mazugian did that panel, actually. Anyway, I'll let you know. Anyway, so here is the introduction, as I said, and then we also have an introduction by Alan Moore of Watchmen fame, who was a big fan of the Spirit, as many good comic book artists and writers are. And it was of its day, so quite spectacular paneling. And this is from the first appearance. So the Spirit took up, I think, 12 pages, and then it was 4 pages of, I think it was all 16 pages altogether, So it was 8 pages plus 4 plus 4. So 4 of Mr. Mystic and then 4 of Lady Luck. So it was a genuine comic book that was inserted in the newspapers. And here we have the origin of the spirit, as I said, from June 2nd, 1940. And as he is here, first he is killed, and somehow with these chemicals, and then somehow he survives. He is buried in Wildwood Cemetery, it's called. I don't know if it's called that I can't remember if it's called that in the first page. And here is one of the main supporting characters, the chief of police, Dolan, and that's an unfortunate stereotype of a character called Ebony White. And so there we go. This is the spirit in his first adventure. He had a calling card, which was a little, I don't know if you see it in here, but it's in one of these panels. And it was just a little statuette of a tombstone, because his headquarters was in a cemetery. And there's Detective Dolan's daughter, the paramour of our protagonist, the spirit. And you can see from the artwork that in comparison with his later work, it was more cartoony and kind of less realism. It didn't have the dark noir type shadows. They're monstrous characters, much in the vein of Batman. But for me, as a mature reader, I prefer reading these stories. I prefer reading the spirit stories versus the Batman stories. The early Batman stories don't have quite the sophistication that this did for me. One of the ways he got around was by this kind of airplane right here. It's like a car plane. All of that in the later adventures of the spirit were kind of lost as Eisner continued to grow artistically and developed a kind of style of noir realism that to me appeared less cartoony and more realistic. So this is from July 14th, 1940, Mr. Midnight it's called. You can see the logo is beginning to become prominent in the early pages. And you can see the paneling, the sophistication of the panelings. And there's his flying automobile. And there's another villain, monstrous in appearance. I think taking a page out of the work of people like Chester Gould and the Dick Tracy adventures. And here's the Pagliacci, the killer clown, an oft-told story in the comic books. There's a Phantom Lady story that's similar to this. Very much admired series. And here we have the Death Dolls, very interesting adventure series, elements of science fiction with giant robots and these killer dolls. Just very, very different. Quite, as I would say, a departure from what what was going on in the comic books back then, especially in the pages of national periodicals, which is DC Comics, and Timely, which became Marvel Comics. Just fascinating characters, just really different. These early stories are among the best in my view. Beautiful splash page. All right, and that's volume 1. And there's the dust jacket. Back page. These are well worth collecting or having. I just buy them one at a time when I see them. I'm not in a rush to get the complete collection. And here we have, this is stories from January 5th, 1941. And you have Dave Gibbons. There's the villain in this piece. The Black Bow. You can see the logo is beginning to change and becoming more sophisticated. Let's see. Yeah, see here? That's Ebony White. That's the character. It's an unfortunate stereotype. Very much of its day, unfortunately. The artwork is superlative, like it's just amazing. All kinds of stereotypes. But just incredible storytelling. Eventually, the story is what carried the here's Davy Jones' Locker. The story is what carried the issues from issue to issue in the comic book inserts. They were a weekly comic book. This is from February 2nd, 1941, and this one's called Davy Jones' Locker. You can see. Just amazing. Amazing artwork. The use of the panels. There you go. Look at that. And there's Commissioner Dolan, who appears in most of the stories. Just move the book. And let's see. Okay. Here's a radio, an old radio. Oh, it's an old television. Interesting. So this was a comic book. Hard to imagine that today. A comic book in a newspaper. Here's Invasion from Argos. Just looking at the initial splash page is a treat in and of itself. Here's another one. It's from March 2nd, 1941. Alright, so that's that one. And then we have this one. And this story in particular was the first spirit story I ever read in a book called by Jules Pfeiffer, called The Great Superheroes. And this was the first ever spirit story I ever read. This is from July 6, 1941. As you can see, this is volume 3. And this is Pidgel, one of the many femme fatales that appear in the spirit. And this is Sans Serif, another femme fatale. This makes these stories so much fun. So this is Agent 24. It's kind of a spy mystery adventure. Look at that, panel by panel. You gotta enjoy. And let's see. And this is from July 13th. So as we can see, it's 1 week has passed. So July 6th, July 13th. It was a weekly. That's a lot of work to produce this by very good artists. Alright, so there's our story. This is the first story I ever read from July 20th, 1941. Called The Jewel of Death. Just the lettering, the paneling, the action, everything is just perfect on these things. And this is Pink Perkins. Alright, so that's that volume 3. And then there's volume 4. And this is the last of the spirit volumes I have. Yep. There we go. And this is the gorilla cage. Yeah. Unfortunate stereotyping. Very much of its day. The moral mores and the folkways were very different. The mores of those days was very different from today. This is Mr. Fly. That's this character. And this one's blowing up the dam. Alright, seedy characters. Okay. And here is The Devil's Shoes. Wow. Anyway, so that gives you a little taste of what these books are like. Alright. And somewhat popular is the Lady Luck. This is the 4-page insert. This is an old publication that I purchased years ago. And this is published by Ken Pierce from Chicago. And this is the Lady Luck. And I believe the artist here is Chuck Mizugian. But the major artist for the Lady Luck comic books was a guy named Klaus Nordling. And all the stories here are all Klaus Nordling stories. And very cartoony. But if you read the stories, they're just simple detective yarns with Lady Luck in a mask using her judo skills and jujitsu to beat up her opponents. Alright, so it's black and white, but nicely done story. And there it is. Klaus Nordling was one of the major artists. And that was part of the, like I said, Mr. Mystic plus this one. Eventually the Mr. Mystic character was dropped and it became a 12-page comic book insert with just Lady Luck and the Spirit. And this is volume 2. And you have different artists. He was the first artist, a guy named, I think it says there, let's see, yeah, Chuck Mizugian. Let's see. Nicholas Vicardi or Nick Cardy. Doesn't say. Yeah, Ford. It says by Ford Davis, but it's not Ford Davis. I'll just put the when I find out, I'll put it in. Anyway, Will Eisner is credited with creating the character Lady Luck. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this look at this history of comic books, when comic books were actually used in newspapers as an insert, and Will Eisner was the main artist and creator of the characters. So thanks for watching. Remember to like, the comment, and the subscriptions are always appreciated. Okay, bye.